All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson Mackay.
And today's guest is Dave Salmoni. We discuss animal education, conservation, and chat shows. Dave Salmoni is a Canadian animal trainer, entertainer, host, and producer. He has his own production company, Triosphere, which is based in South Africa and specialises in wildlife films. Salmoni has hosted and produced several television documentaries, including Living with Tigers, Into the Lion's Den, and Sharks, Are They Hunting Us? All three documentaries aired on the Discovery Channel. Salmoni has since starred as a host and expert on Discovery and Animal Planet shows, including Animal Face-Off, Rogue Nation, After the Attack, and Into the Pride. He's also hosted Expedition Impossible, a Mark Burnett show on ABC. Salmoni is regularly featured on numerous talk shows, including Jimmy Kimmel Live, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, Larry King Now, Conan, and Good Morning America. And in this interview, we discuss how we can have open and honest discussions on animals to truly start to make a difference, hunting and land use, the truth about animals on talk shows, how you can help animals being affected by the COVID pandemic, and so much more. And now, let's get to the interview. Thank you so much for coming on. You have no idea how much I've been looking forward to this. You're one of the first people I wanted to have on the show. I've been a big fan of yours for years, but for maybe the four people who don't know you, could you give a quick introduction? Because how do you define what you do?
I do find that difficult, and certainly having kids now, and you meet people and you have that 10-second schoolyard introduction. If someone asks me, I kind of almost ignore it because it's what I do is I chase around my passions and the things that I love to do, and what that's led to is I'm a biologist. I was an animal trainer for many years. I guess I still am technically. I work in television. I guess my job is I'm a large predator expert. I have been doing host-driven wildlife shows for the last 20-something years, since 1999, so whatever that is. So what I do is, I'm a person who's interested in animals and wildlife, and I go and try and sell the story that I'm interested in to try to get networks interested so that I can tell the rest of the world so that they can be interested. And it's literally that simple. Unfortunately, that doesn't fall into I'm a biologist, I'm a zoologist, I'm a wildlife host presenter. I'm a lot of those things. I'm a producer. I'm a dad. I'm an animal activist. I'm a conservationist. But you could say all those words and still not quite get it.
Because it certainly was difficult to explain. Usually I can say to somebody, he's a jiu-jitsu competitor, he's this, he's that. But when I was trying to explain what you did, I was like, let me come back to you.
It really depends on the depth of the dive, right? If you Google, the stuff that comes up usually is more the talk show stuff that I do in the US, where you see me on a show like Jimmy Kimmel Live. And so some people, if that's as deep as their dive goes, then I'm a guy who goes on TV with animals to try to convince people that animals are awesome and that conservation is important. You dive a little deeper, you're going to find, the Animal Planet stuff and the Discovery Channel stuff. And then if you dive a little deeper, so you can really, it really does become difficult depending on how much looking as to what I do. But a lot of people only know me from their window. So you can always tell, you meet someone in an airport and oh my God, you're that lion guy. I'm like, okay, to this guy, I'm a lion guy. That's awesome. And, or, oh my God, I've seen you on the talk show guy. So you're right.
So You've talked about how your like passion for animals is inbuilt. I mean, I think people who love animals are just born with it. Like I love all animals of all descriptions, but I mean, I've worked in an area where you raise sheep, we see wild deer and stuff like that. But when you come from Canada and now working in the African bush, you're chasing lions and tigers, you're swimming with sharks, all these sorts of things. Could you give somebody a little introduction, like how can you go from it's not the usual career path is probably the best way of putting it. Could you
Yeah,
give us
it's
sort of a
true.
little summary?
Yeah, I'll give you the summary, but I won't. I won't suggest it is a how-to because it just happens. It unfolds in front of you rather than it being something that, oh well, this is an easy career to have if you just do these things. Um, I started, as you say, born with this love of animals. I always thought animals liked me, whether that was true or not. I always had that belief. Uh, Came to choosing what university degree I wanted to get, and animals was really the only thing I was interested in. Not with the idea of a job yet, which was dumb in most people's definition of why you go to university, but that's what I wanted. That led to tracking bears and doing an honors thesis in bear behavior. Uh, Too much time in the research department got me into the idea of I actually just want to spend time with animals. So then I left that and became an animal trainer. I went to a privately owned zoo who really believed that animals didn't belong in the cages; they belonged out of the cages. So if they learn the rules, like the rules, then they could come out and exercise every day, entertain their brain. I bought into that idea, thinking that that was a good way to make some animals that I loved make their day a little bit better. And then from there, got the opportunity to do a conservation project with tigers. That project, oddly, tigers drew me to Africa. And then that was the project, the tiger project in Africa was the one that drew me into television. Television kind of kicked the doors open to whatever you're interested in, Dave, because I started in television right when Steve Irwin was just exploding. Like they just like picture the networks are just seeing Steve jumping on crocodiles or alligators and saying, "Oh, look how awesome this is," and them saying, "Well, we could get some more of this." And I kind of rode that kind of tidal wave that Steve created. So the networks were just saying like, just keep doing what you're doing and make sure you love it, and the people that are watching are going to love it too. And that kind of got me to this a 46-year-old father who's pretty beat up and broken from all the different adventures I've had, but also pretty fun life.
No, I mean it's definitely one of those lives that I would love to have. You seem to have the dream life because I've coming from the Highlands, we got to see like wildlife like wrapped close and personal, and it always made me like, where do they go? The migration paths, how do they breed? How do they do this? How do they do that? And you're living that dream. You're getting to go off and explore these things. But can you explain about how you say if you got a project just now, you were to go and explore the bush looking for a particular type of animal. Could you explain like how you even go about something like that? How do you start planning to find the
Yeah.
animals, locate them, film them, but make sure that you're portraying the true behavior of the animal rather than the manipulated that you see, like some of these tiger programs on Netflix, for example.
Yeah. Um, it's an interesting question. Each idea just starts with something that I'm interested in, particularly the ones that are dangerous. But if you're going to be out there in the middle of the bush risking your life, you better want to be there and love being there. If the driving factor is television or fame or money, then you're not going to survive very long. I did meet those guys. I just didn't understand those guys. Um, so, with an overarching question, one being maybe I wonder if I could introduce myself and be accepted by a Pride Alliance. Right. With that question, the research starting point is very obvious. It's a matter of what does the world think about human and animal interaction, that animal interaction, and what do I think I bring to that is different. And then from there, my next question is what's the worst case scenario? In my head, that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm researching what we already know. I'm researching the thoughts that I think. What do I think that's different? And then if I get attacked by that bear, shark, tiger, what do I need to know? Now, if it's a big cat or something like that, it's very close friends of mine that I'm calling and I'm going through stuff with. If it's sharks and things like that, I'm actually going online like you would and say, who are the smartest shark people? Who knows anything about shark attacks? Who's ever survived shark attacks? Does anyone have a solution to a shark attack? And then really going to like a fitness professional and saying, all right, well, if I'm getting attacked by a shark, here's what my body needs to do to keep myself alive. So if I'm giving myself the confidence from Dave, you're building a body that can react properly when you're in the terrible situation, and you've built that interest around all the other research, then your brain's in a pretty good spot. You're in a real positive position to get out there. While I'm doing that, I've got, the producers that I love and the friends that I'm used to. So if I'm doing an African adventure, I have a production company in South Africa. It's obvious. I call them up and I'm like, hey guys, what's the best pride of lions or great white shark area or elephant area where we can view this behavior and get this reaction or understand it in this way. But then along with that, you're also having to build a team, right? So you're only as good as the worst person on your team. If you're going to be doing lions on foot, you got to find some cameramen who are great at capturing images for the people at home so they can tell the story, but also not be in danger by being on foot. I mean, to some degree, I'm in charge of everyone's safety, but also to some degree, everyone's in charge of their own. So, you build the team over the years of great African guys and great North American guys, and so it becomes species or danger specific. If you're underwater, in my case, oddly, I've probably been underwater 500 times because I've done a lot of aquatic shows. But because I'm a host and because I never really got confident, because I learned on camera in the show. I've always just had one or two safety divers. So because of that, safety has never been my thing. So even in my 500th dive, I still don't feel great underwater unless I'm with some safety guy who knows a bit more. So that's all the elements. The actual production and finding the location and getting the deal done as far as rights, insurances, the finances, all that kind of stuff. I get involved, but it's not my bread and butter. It's not something I'm good at. It's kind of the other stuff, the research side, the passion side. That is where I tend to drive the project.
Because it certainly comes across with your love of animals. Every time I've watched shows and stuff, it's not so much the celebrity stuff of it. You're actually interested in the animal. You're always checking on it. You're always talking with love and passion about the animal, and it really comes across to somebody who understands it. But now that we see these rises of all these extra documentaries on YouTube and Netflix, and it really bugs me that people see that as a good animal husbandry. That's the accepted thing.
I think that this current day and age will be the death of all the stuff that you're talking about, as far as having groups of wranglers that I can call up and say, hey, we've got a group that's interested in cheetah conservation. Can you bring your cheetah so I can do a presentation, explain to people all the 70,000 things I think are awesome about cheetahs, and really get people in that room pumped up about saving this cheetah? Those people are going to be gone because not Netflix, but the what's happened after the Netflix specials like Tiger King or the subsequent ones, it's got the world believing that that's what is normal. Those people will crack pots well before they ever had a special. I knew of those crazy people, and they were the crazy people. Everybody in the world, we all know crazy people in jobs that we do. I have a couple of friends that are mailmen, but going postal is a whole different thing. Not because of what actual normal mailmen do. It's because there are crazy people in every profession. So I do believe that because public opinion through social media was shifting greatly already, in that the activists are the angriest and the loudest, and trolling is a lot more popular online than anything else, really. And so it's kind of the message that people are seeing. Then that gets reinforced by Tiger King and the media that surrounds that. So the only thing we've ever heard of captive animals in the last 3 years at least is bad. So someone like me absolutely is getting lumped into people like them. Whereas the truth of the matter is, way back, my very first on-camera experience where I was like the animal wrangler, the Jack Hanna, the guy that's holding the animal on a talk show, trying to get people convinced. I realized back then in 2003 that there wasn't a good enough standards and practices where there was a vetting system where the producers and I knew for sure that animal came from a good home and is going back to a good home. And yet so then I spent the last, 18, 19 years developing those systems to the point where I don't think you could go anywhere in North America and get a captive animal on screen without going through an intense vetting system. That's designed by me and my teams, the lawyers and the animal husbandry people that I have been working with since 2003. Like, that's where that all comes from. And yet, all of a sudden now in 2021, I get lumped in with these people that are, acting a fool and breeding cats, for pictures and, selling them irrationally and all these other things. I think that it will change the landscape such that it will never recover. On top of which, COVID, because those little small places, those little rescues, those little sanctuaries, those little people with those big, big hearts for animals, they're always breadlined. If you ever see anybody over my shoulder collecting up one of those animals, you'll see love, but you won't see wealth. Like, those people aren't doing it because they're getting rich doing it. They're doing it because they really love it. And they believe what I believe. Like, sometimes the amount of money that they probably barely get their gas money to be out there, but they believe, oh man, but if Dave gets my snake out there, maybe Dave can convince people that snakes aren't so scary. And they desperately want me. And when they're handing it to me, they're like, hey, make sure you tell people this interesting fact, because I think that will get them into thinking that this snake's not a scary snake, it's a good snake, and people will stop killing it. Like, that old process, all those wonderful people, they don't have people coming to their place and paying the $10 to see them do their little animal shows or, their conservation-based shows or their education shows. And I think that COVID will have hurt a lot of those people to the point where animals are going to suffer for it. There won't be. So if you get a Tiger King, there won't be as many happy homes anymore that you can say, okay, I'm going to take that tiger from that jerk and I'm going to give it to this happy little group over here that do take care of their animals. Those guys are gone. The good, happy guys are gone because they just ran out of money or they got attacked so much on social media that they couldn't survive.
I mean, you do see that, don't you? It's like the Lion Whisperer, Dean Snyder, or these like people who spend amazing amounts of effort and love, and they have these like animal rescue places that they really look after the animals. But then you get these sort of arseholes who think, nope, that's it. My view is black and white. That's wrong, taking an animal on a talk show, for example, like we were discussing before we started. But if that's what we need to do, is to take them onto a chat show to educate somebody and explain to them the plight of the animals and how the conservation work's been happening. And I think that's the problem, is it creates such an emotion in people that we were just black or white. It's I'm right or wrong. It's like, it doesn't matter what you think. That's my opinion, and that's the truth. And that bugs me because I lived in an area where we see animals getting slaughtered, for food. We raise and sell lambs and stuff like that. People don't even know where their food comes from. Never mind where these live animals like that are known as the king of the jungle for a very good reason. How do you start educating people into this? How do you start trying to build up an education program so people can actually understand A, how to interact with these animals, but B, how we can look after them, because we keep sort of encroaching into their habitats, and we're building on land that they were roaming on. We're always going to bump into them. But people say, nope, trophy hunting's bad. Nope, we shouldn't be hunting. But, we don't have a replacement funding source for these places if we take away hunting, for example, and we don't have ways for them to make money elsewhere. So how do we start educating people on the plight of animals and helping in our conservation efforts? I know that's about 50 questions, but...
Yeah. And there's lots to unpack there, and it kind of digs into the original thought that the biggest problem that animals have, in my opinion, is that those of us that have a voice cannot agree. Because you're right, it is very emotion-based and moral and ethical based. When most people protest each other, like if Kevin Richardson says, "Oh, I hate that Dave Salmoni guy for this reason," I saw him do this with a lion, and I don't do that. I do this with my lions. There's lots of things for two animal people to disagree on, but eventually what has to happen in the very near future is all of the animal people who have a voice have to say, doesn't do it my way, but we have to have the same voice because we need the other people. There's no point in me selling another lion guy that lion conservation is important. He already knows. Whether he hates me or likes me, we all want to save lions. We just might not agree with each other. What the problem with the disagreeing and voicing of our disagreeing is that there's not a consistent voice coming out saying, hey guys, this is what lions need. And that's kind of the question you had, is how do we get people to jump on board with the conservation effort, is by getting consistent with what we say. putting the disagreements, like when the first thing comes up, when, oh, do you know this conservation group? Oh, I heard about this. I heard about them. Your answer should be, oh yeah, they're doing some good things. Maybe not exactly how I would, but good things. And you voice that consistent voice. But then because the people who are actually going to make change in the world aren't the animal lovers like us. It's us getting the rest of them going. It's why I go on talk shows. There's no point in me. If you're tuning in to Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, and watching my show already, you already love animals. You don't love my shows because you think I'm nice in a green shirt. You like lions, you like elephants, you like sharks. The talk show people, that's the other audience. That's the bigger audience. That's the group of people that are like, I think I like animals. Oh, watching that guy, now I know I like animals and I love that guy. And oh, they need help. Well, what kind of help? And that's when you start to get your bigger team and your bigger people, and they all and the voice and the consistency of what's needed grows. And people want to do it. People love animals. Even the people that don't agree with each other. Like, I don't agree with what PETA does in any way, but they're all animal lovers. And at some way, we have to get out there and get the rest of people going, okay, we all have to push in this direction because animals deserve their space, and hopefully in the wild. So that's the start. The start of getting the change is getting consistent with what we're telling the rest of the world, who just quickly Google, what can I do for elephants? There should be a list right here. This is what you can do. And then I think the rest of it is, as you say, as things get tricky, like land use, right? Where people say, oh, well, if you love animals, you shouldn't love trophy hunting. Well, I think that's true in some cases, and I think that's completely untrue in other cases. As you say, land use is, if there's no other better conservational method in that particular area, then hunting will do it. Hunting will keep some animals there wild, because farming certainly doesn't. Farming means all the wild animals go. So it's those more difficult questions, I think, that need just people to take the time to specialize and learn. If you think there's a better land use for animals, then figure it out and present that idea. And hopefully the people you're presenting it to have an open enough mind. Like, the problem with a lot of times is like, oh, okay, if I think that this is much better run under ecotourism than it is trophy hunting, and you present it to a trophy hunter, the trophy hunter's like, okay, I forget it. We're not doing that. So I think the elements of all of it basically runs down to, how do we get the people that need support the support they need? Because in the only places where animals are being conserved are when they're an asset, right? So if you go to Africa, outside the fences of the game reserves, the animals are devastated. Whereas if you go inside the game reserves, they're awesome. And every local that's in there, because they have jobs making food, taking tour guides, fixing buildings, whatever it is that their job is, they love their job. And so they love the animals because the animals pay for the job. And in all of the places that those animals become an asset, the people are supportive. And once the people that are living with that animal are supportive, then it's going to be great. I was really deep into, and M would like to be, deep into tiger conservation. And I spend a lot of time in India, in the really rural places where the tigers are living. They're living with some of the poorest people, sickest people, people with the least amount of stuff that I've ever seen. It's pretty tough to explain to them, hey, you should be worried about this apex predator over here. Yep. Well, they can barely eat themselves. Like, I don't think that's a stupid conversation to have. Whereas if you create a job with that tiger, or even just say, hey, tiger conservation built this school, this church, and this hospital, and we'll keep doing it and we'll keep funding it if you just leave those tigers alone. Those are the projects that work. And I think we know that now. And I think that, big groups like WWF are starting to push in those directions, where they recognize you can't have a little project in isolation, meaning you've got to go after politics, you have to go over community support, and then you have to go over the wildlife. Getting an animal to live in a wild space is pretty easy. We really do know how to do that. It's the other elements that support it that I think would cause the rest of us to be more successful. For example, and I know I hate conservation conversations where they seem doom and gloom and impossible. Tiger populations have started to grow for the first time since they started going away in the 50s. So they've doubled every year for the last 3, which is great news for tigers because we're figuring it out.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, if you're sitting there and you're like, okay, brilliant, like, we'll put out an advert for, raising funds for tiger conservation. maybe 5 people see it. But you go onto a popular talk show, you might educate somebody, inspire somebody who actually has never known about it and sees it and goes,
100%.
And that's what I was trying to explain to people. It's like you have to bring it in front of them. It might not be the methods that we'd want it to be. And you talked in another interview that I was listening to where you said we need to stop thinking about how we want it to be and think about instead how it is.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
what
like you're
I'm going to
saying,
do. And not to cut you off, but you also got to think of the negative. I know when you're talking that specific instance, the negative is, you're exploiting the animal. Well, let's think about what that word means, right? Like, or even if you're stressing that animal out, let's think about what those means are. We can manage for stress. All of us, there's probably groups of people. Every animal usually comes with 2 or 3 wranglers. They're all watching. If they see stress in their animal, they've raised that animal. They know stress. They're all given permission. Take it away, put it in its home the minute it feels stressed. So that's not really an issue. And exploitation kind of suggests that we're getting something and not giving something. Well, not exactly true either, because the animals are loving the time out. The animals love all the extra treats. You've seen me by the thousands of every show. If you've ever seen anything I've ever done, I love giving animals treats because you're like Uncle Dave. So the negatives aren't really there. The possibility for a negative, absolutely. So like if I bring a full-grown bear, the possible negative is someone's going to get bit. So that then I see an argument, but I do not see an argument when you see an animal perfectly happy to be there. In fact, enjoying the time away from its captive life. That's kind of a little bit boring for its brain. They're getting all kinds of treats. We got people monitoring for stress. There is no negative, but the upswing, as you mentioned so well, is millions of people are watching. This is your moment. You have 2 minutes to express to the world how awesome a lemur is. And I think I got him in 30 seconds. So the upside is far, far better than whatever negative you can kind of come up. I'm sorry. I know I interrupted you there.
No,
but
no,
it was
no.
an interesting point that I wanted to make, because the negatives aren't what people saying they are.
Well, for example, just now I'm in the Highlands. So I'm up helping my parents during the COVID situation, which explains my disturbing background. And I'm staying up with them. And just now we've got the deer stalking season going on. So we've got the gillies, and we've got everybody going out and shooting. And then you start having the conversation of we've got a team that are going out just now who are really skilled, and they will not just shoot any animal they see. They will pick particularly older animals, sicker animals. But then you have the thing of, well, do we take the animals that are stronger if we're selling them for food? Do we kill off the younger ones? Do you kill off the sicker ones? How do you control the population? And that's just the deer. But if you don't control them in a certain way, because some people say ban all shooting animals, but then you have an explosion of a population.
Yep.
The prey, predator,
Yep.
balance goes out, the ecosystem goes crazy, etc., etc. That's just deer, for example. I mean, and they're everywhere here. They're a nuisance on the road, etc.
Well, what's interesting is, at least in Canada, I think that one of the highest taxpayers, income taxpayers, is the deer hunting community. And on top of which, as you say, the government uses them as their population management tool. So you're getting free labor because they're going out and managing your population for you. And they're paying taxes on the beer and the gas and the travel and the accommodation. And anyways, to your point, I personally don't want to hunt. I can understand why some people get upset when people enjoy killing something. That's just because I didn't grow up in the culture. So that's, but you have to understand that animals are, once again, I go back to ethics and morals are your own. You can't expect even your closest friend to have your ethics and your morals. You have to accept, whether you like it or you don't, that deer population needs those hunters. And if they're not there, they're gone. So I totally agree with you. You don't have to appease the person. The person can say, I still think you're a jerk for shooting that deer. Okay, well, you think I'm a jerk, fine. But it still needs me. And I'm doing more for conservation of that deer than you are yelling and screaming about me being here.
Because it's something I've noticed. I worked in a hatchery salmon smolt site, and we were growing them from the eggs through to this, and the amount of people who'd say to me, "Oh, salmon raised factory salmon. It's disgusting. It should be destroyed. It's a horrible industry." But you looked at in the Highlands, how many jobs it was sustaining, how many people were able to live here because of that. How much of an industry, all the side project companies that were working with us, that we were funding, especially in COVID time. And I think that's just fish, that's just deer. Look at them at like places in Africa where, local tribes who have only got, like you're saying, they're interacting with lions on a daily basis. They're interacting, with these amazing animals. And yes, they're beautiful and no one wants to see them getting killed and stuff. But I think we have to have that discussion is, where do we draw that line between good animal husbandry, good control, and love of animals? You can love animals, but still manipulate and control the stocks. And especially as we're continuously taking over the planet, how have you noticed animal behavior changing over the sort of like the 10 to 20 years that you've been working? Have you noticed a change in their behaviors and in the kind of maybe how people are accepting it, or how animals are behaving now as we move into these kind of areas?
Yeah, I think that there are, because I have been around, there are instances like a coyote. I would say 20 years ago when a coyote wasn't considered a domesticated animal in any way, whereas now you see a coyote. Like when I grew up, it was a raccoon. So in North America, if you don't take care of your garbage in the city, then a raccoon's going to get into it. And now that's also true with coyotes. Like, even people in the middle of downtown Toronto are saying, "Oh, we better keep our dogs away from this coyote area." So encroachment in that way exists, and behavioral changes on both sides, meaning the animals are getting used to and understanding when they should be moving, when they should be hiding, where they should be eating, where they should be. So behavioral changes happen quickly, and then the human idea of what they are. So a coyote was a beautiful animal probably 15 years ago in where I am, and now a lot of people think of them as these, enraged dog killers. Whereas, I don't even know if there's even been one case, but I'm sure there's been one or two around here. But that's what they'll all tell you. Oh, coyote! You saw a coyote. Oh, but be careful, your dog. My dog's 120 pounds. I think I'm okay. But outside of that, in the bigger picture, I spent a lot of my life in rural areas, and elephants are one that comes to mind because it's the one that's probably the most devastating. Like I was in India looking into what people were doing and how they were living around India. It was an interesting fact that an elephant could in 11 minutes eat a family's entire year's worth of rice, which I thought was like, oh my God. So like you have to defend them every single night. You have to defend your crop every single night. And if you screw up for even 11 minutes, you got no food. So the things that are interesting there is what techniques people are using to get the elephants out of the way, and what the elephants have started doing. So there's an interesting escalation, particularly in elephants, but it happens in other animals as well. So you would put chili peppers around your field, so then the elephants would learn how to get over the chili pepper fences, and then you would dig trenches and they would learn how to get around that. And then they'd start chasing them with fireworks, and then the elephants would get scared, and then they would run through huts. So there's constant escalation of, well, then I'll do this, then I'll do that. Well, it's no different than a predator-prey relationship. As they develop ways of getting around the predation, the predator, gets smarter, and then the prey gets smarter. So the consistent adaptation is a natural process that we're all part of and used to, and is absolutely happening. And the way that the changes that we're seeing in it is typically the ones that are the most devastating, meaning elephants is a great example. Monkeys are another good example because they're in such numbers and they're so able to integrate themselves into a domesticated area really quickly. But there's examples of that all over the world where people are dealing with wildlife as a pest. The animals that we're like, oh my God, I saw a vervet monkey yesterday. And in other parts of the world, they're like, I hate those monkeys. Damn vervet monkeys. If I see one, I'll shoot it. So perspective is everything in those types of relationships.
Because it's definitely something I see a lot of, is people going, oh, it's absolutely beautiful. But it's like we pick a panda because we think it's cute. And we think we should work on it to, procreate and give it as much space and all these systems to help it. But then we look at another animal that's maybe not as beautiful and go, yeah, let's just kill it.
Oh, yeah. Reptiles are always like that. Bugs are like that. Like anything that's not beautiful really gets a bad rap. Fish, as you brought up, like people don't care if you kill fish. I remember the first time I was asked to do like a survival-based show. And I'm like, well, I'll sneak up on animals and like tag them. They're it. But it's just not who I am. It's not where I'm comfortable. I'm not going to, I'm not going to kill an animal just for a TV show. If I'm starving and I'm going to die in the bush, fine. But I'm not doing it just for entertainment. And their initial reaction was, okay, well, let's just do fish. And at first I was going to agree and go like, I don't know if that's completely different or if it's just because they're not as pretty or what it is. But yeah, it's absolutely a fact that the better looking we deem an animal to be, the more support they get for sure.
It was like that PETA advert where they were showing there was like different ranges of animals, and they were drawing the line saying, you'll eat this side but not that side. What stops it here? And I was thinking, well, actually, other cultures will go much further over than and it's like that idea.
Ask them about themselves. Why is it okay that I have I'm a jerk. I get bad emails from them every day about the tiger I'm holding or the sloth that I'm protecting, or not to mention maybe they're the rescues, maybe they're from a sanctuary, maybe I'm helping them, and they got all dogs and cats and things in their house. Like every one of them's got a pet in their house. I mean, is that any different than what I'm doing?
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
Because that's the thing that really bugged me about it was when I initially saw it, that people were going, oh, he's a jerk. Oh, he's abusing these animals, taking them on a talk show. And you're thinking, well, we need to get these, you need the education. You need to display these to people. And if it means going on to a talk show, then fine. That's a way we do it. And we've got these great documentaries. But the other thing is, it's like, you're not taking an animal just on, pulling it out of out somewhere wild and just immediately throwing it onto the thing. There's all these health and safety rules. There's training that you've got to put into it, and you're explaining, you're working with that animal to, to give it enrichment.
People are more telling. As you say, people would much rather say, oh, this is what he's doing. None of them have been there. They probably don't know that every time I go, I have to bring someone from a humane society to be there watching, right? So for anything like that, they probably don't know that the production side, they have to have their team of lawyers look into all of the wranglers and all the people that are going to be anywhere near the animals and all the safety regulations. And then I have to, on my side, same thing, legally check in, make sure everybody's okay. And then I send an actual husbandry person to their house, talk to their vet, talk to their staff, make sure that they're being taken care of, et cetera, et cetera. No one's ever asked any of those types of questions. They're just more likely to say, well, he gets them and then he gets sold off into backyard this. I'm like, well, that's never happened. But okay, tell people that that's true. Or abuse. I just say, and if you ever rewatched, I would not say that never has an animal been nervous on set. But back and rewatch, you'll see what I do. I say, I think this guy wants to go home. And I give it to its mom, and it goes into his place. Every single animal's got their own green room. That's a little quiet space with their special treats and their whatever a lot of times we'll travel them with their friends, and they go back with their pals, and that's it. So I would love to have those conversations, but it's not a conversation, right? It's an attack. Because I'm not gonna give somebody 10 minutes when they're already, fuck you, you abuse all these animals. But if it came at me and you were saying, hey, like, how do you make sure that you're doing the right thing? How do you make sure the animals aren't stressed out? How do you make sure that this is a good experience for the animals? I can say, well, shit, so glad you asked that, because of course it interests me. That's what I do for a living. I could talk for hours, the number of things that I do to make sure the animals are comfortable, make sure they have fun. I could tell you, every single show I ever go on, they always say, man, these animals, they get treated better than the celebrities. Well, it's true, but because the celebrities have a voice and these animals don't. I'm the only one. So my point to all of that is that, we need to get back to that position where they ask the expert. I'm clearly the expert. How do we take care of these animals that are going to be on these shows? Oh, let me tell you, I'm happy to.
because it's something that does come across as the love that you have for the animals. Sometimes you even forget to talk to the host because you're too busy checking the animal and explaining it. Like my family have grown up with, we've got sheep, for example, sheep. To move sheep, you have to have a movement book. You have to monitor the medicines you give them. You have to have like a certificate from where they're going from, where they're going to. It has to be down the chain. There's so much regulation and control, and that's sheep. And people are gonna suggest you're just gonna pluck out a lion, you're gonna pluck out a monkey, and go, let's take it onto Conan, let's take it onto Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah. People don't want to hear. They don't want to hear the truth. As I say, it's never a question; it's always a statement. There's reasons for that, and some of them I respect. Sometimes people love animals because animals are very accepting. There are people that are ostracized in our human society because of the way they think and act and are accepted like crazy with animals. Some of the quirkiest people I know are animal people because animals accept their quirks. They don't really care if you're cool or not cool. But those same quirky people, the way that they express their love is almost in knocking down someone else. Well, you don't love them as much as I love them. So if I knock you down, it shows how much I love animals. So I always picture someone on their little trolling keyboard. Oh, screw him. These are the 6 things he did wrong with that animal. And I tried in my head, go like, oh, that person just loves animals a lot. They love animals a lot. And this is how they tell their 25 friends that follow them on Twitter how much they love those animals. So it's an interesting perspective because animal people are very passionate, but certainly it kind of gets presented in a negative way sometimes.
Because like if you watch any of your shows, you go in and you're very strict on watching from the side. You don't go in and like slap the tiger at the back of the head to say, watch this, watch me attack, like show the attack procedure or something like that. You will stay from the side. You have very strict control of how things are done, so you're not manipulating the animals and stuff. How do you avoid getting to that point though of like, okay, we need to get viewers, we need to get ratings? Is there that tendency to kind of like, because you've got an amazing skill set of working with these animals, how do you make sure though you're not getting overconfident and thinking?
Well, that was a harder question to answer when I was younger. When I first started getting into television, certainly directors that would come, because I didn't know anything about direction, I didn't know anything about television, and the directors like, and I'm more talking about in the wild because before television I was already an animal wrangler, so my ethics and my morals were pretty set in a captive or a studio environment on my own. I knew what was right and wrong or what I was okay with and what I wasn't okay with. But when I got into television, when you'd have a director say, hey, take another step, get a little closer to that animal. And I'm like, oh, I think that elephant's getting upset. I'm seeing him swing his feet. I'm seeing his ears come out. And he's puffing a touch. I think we're pissing him off. I think we're done for today with this elephant. And the director, who's got another agenda, it doesn't have my sensitivity, doesn't see what I'm seeing, is saying, well, my film needs 10 more minutes of elephant. I'm sorry, but this is what we need to tell the story properly. And when I was younger, I probably wasn't aware that I could just say, or I didn't put myself in a position where I could just say, I don't care. These animals need a break. Very quickly, I realized that was a conflict. So that's why I started my own production company. That's why I was involved in hiring directors and producers. And that's why eventually, with the more dangerous projects, the more bush-related projects, the more natural-related projects, I was the boss. So in the end, if the film and the storytelling ever got in the way with doing the right thing animal-wise, well, I more cared about who I was as a human than I did about my television career. And I was lucky in that way because I didn't go into this wanting a television career. I stayed with it because they were paying for me to do some of the most incredible things on the planet. But TV wasn't my intention. TV was like this, okay, if you guys are going to keep paying me to swim with sharks, play with elephants, and hang with lions, I'm going to do it. I think it would be very hard. Yeah, I think it would be very hard if your dream in life was to be on TV. Like the people that call me up and say, oh, Dave, I want to be a television presenter with animals. That person would have a lot more trouble because they're living their dream and they would hate to upset the apple cart. And if my show is going to get more ratings, if I just take that one more step closer to that lion, well, that's a good way to get killed. But it's also a good way to piss off an animal and then him not come back tomorrow, or just start to get the reputation of being a jerk, and then the cameraman won't work with you anymore because you piss off animals, and the people who are letting you on their property to film their animals are going to say, oh, all you do is scare my animals. Like, there's a lot of repercussions for being a jerk, but absolutely the entertainment side wants to push. So you need to put yourself in a position where the animal expert, where me, for this example, is the top of the chain, where he says, this is what we're going to do and not do, so that the director can push. Dave, take another step. And I look at the situation, and I look at the animal. He's calm and he's eating, and that rhino looks really happy, and I can see they just want me to get in that light over there, and I can go, yep, I can do that and not piss this animal off. Let's do it. Give me 30 seconds, and I'm going to get into that position for you. So it's constantly letting the director push for the entertainment, try to tell the story the way he wants. And sometimes it puts himself in a situation where I have to say, oh, no, that's not good for the animals. Let's stop. Or I can say, oh, I can do that, but here's the way we're going to do it. So in the end, it's just a part of production. If you're going to be good at this job, and if you're going to do it consistently, and you're going to have the best team, I'm not the only animal lover on my team, right? Like, you're not going to be a cameraman walking behind me as a lion charges you. If you don't love lions in the bush, that first lion charge, you're out of there. You're gone. I'll tell you a funny story as I jump from point to point. But my point is, we're all animal lovers, and if someone starts pissing off animals, you're not going to work with anybody. But to highlight that point, when I was doing a tiger project, very young in my television career, we'd hired a new guy, and it was a 5-year project. So cameramen were coming and going because they had to go home to their families. This young guy out of film school was filming, and these 2 tigers were captive bred, and I was teaching them how to go wild. I was teaching them how to hunt and want them to go wild. My male tiger had caught something, but he was around 4 years old, so he was starting to fight me for his kills. But there was lots of areas where they would kill things that didn't have full fencing, so I'd have to take it from him and bring it back to where there was fencing so he could eat his kill. Because you can't have him overnight in an unfenced area, obviously. Anyway, I go to take this carcass from this tiger. Tiger is charging me, roaring at me, dragging me, coming at me. And like a tiger mad is like, there's nothing with a worse temper than a tiger. The tiger's temper is the worst. And I'm in this argument with this tiger, and I look over at my shoulder, and this cameraman has got the camera pointed at his shoes and his mouth open like this. And of course, I'm in a bad mood because I'm getting attacked by a tiger. And I'm like, if you're not going to film, get the fuck out of here. And of course, I get the tiger back into happy mode. I get the carcass back into a safe area. He gets eating it, and I walk out. And the guy on the ride back to our camp is like, I'm going home. I'm like, yeah, I can see. He didn't have the love and the passion that you would need to, be in the middle of the bush getting attacked by a tiger. So it takes a very special person to either be in front of the camera or behind the camera if you're going to be on that team.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like people just assume it's like you just nip out and you come across a bunch of tigers, you follow them eating, it's like they don't seem to understand the amount of work that goes into it to let the animal trust you enough. Like, I mean, these are a lot of wild animals. These are kind of potentially putting yourself into that dangerous situation. Yeah. How have you managed that transition then? Because you used to work solely with the animals, and then you were going and doing actual presentations. Then you were actually doing the TV star side of it. But you still have to run the project. You still have to make sure that the cameramen are safe, do a risk assessment with the animals. There'll be a lot of like following tracks and checking making sure the animal's ready and it's safe to film, etc. How do you juggle that kind of responsibility? How have you found that transition from animal lover and carer to TV star, if you want to call it?
It's one of the things where, at least in my case, I can't speak for everybody, but in my case particularly, I can remember I was very lucky early in my career. For the first 5 years, Steve Irwin was still around. And so no matter how big my star shone, I was many tiers below the top guy up there. The guy, like, no one would be comparing what I was doing to what Steve Irwin was doing, ratings wise, TV wise, fame wise. And so you were never really a star in that case. So you didn't get as much of the celebrity treatment or the responsibility or being put in positions where you had to understand what that was and what it means. I think when I got older, was when I got more pushed into the entertainment side of my job, far less ripped pants in a tent, far more red carpets, studios, whatever, that kind of stuff. But at that point, I was pretty comfortable with who I was. At that point, I already realized that the entertainment side of it was what was paying the bills for me to go out and do what I loved. There was never a time that I can remember that some celebrity moment made me go, ooh, this is what I like and this is what I want more of. There was never enough money in it for me that I was like, oh shit, if I just do this entertainment gig for a couple more years, I'm going to be this real uber wealthy guy. So there wasn't enough wealth to change my personality. There wasn't, being the animal guy, there's never enough celebrity to really change your personality. So at a certain point when there were moments where I was like, I was being the TV guy and not the animal guy, you always knew what your intention was. In my case, I was an animal guy that was happy to smile here, take his picture and say the right thing, because eventually I got to do what I love to do. And in that case, it was going out and doing another animal adventure. And then long term, when I got older, the idea that I could make an impact in conservation through TV was a driving force there. So you kind of dress a certain way and you say a certain thing and you let people kind of manipulate you in an entertainment fashion. Oh, Dave, your hair doesn't look very good. Let me get someone to fix your hair up. Like in my normal life, someone can't walk up to me and say, oh, your hair looks like shit, Dave. But in TV, you accept it because it allows you that opportunity to go out and say, hey guys, tigers are awesome. And here's why. So I think it's just a matter of keeping yourself grounded in a way that you know what you want out of it. What I wanted was more animal adventures. And I was happy to, wear a suit if I was going to walk a red carpet. If that then got me to, a nice whale adventure somewhere.
Because you don't seem to have changed from like the original shows I used to watch to you going on to talk shows and stuff like that. But something I did notice was a lot of people, like especially like the Conan, the Jimmy Kimmel, YouTube, for example, people are like, oh, I didn't know about that, and I'm really interested in that now. There seem to be thousands more interested in animals because of what you're doing. But of course, there were the people who were sitting saying, oh, he's hot. Oh, I would need to his workout. I wonder what, there was that kind of how did you deal with that side of fame? Did you struggle with that initially? That people were more interested in your love life more than the tiger that you brought on to a show?
I think with it flattery is initially. Luckily, it's flattery, and it never comes in a tidal wave where like it doesn't come enough that you're constantly faced with. You're not Justin Bieber. You once in a while get complimented on your looks or your fitness, which I care about because I do work out and and those types of things. So I guess the first way you deal with it is it doesn't have to happen as much as you'd think. But I think a lot of that stuff is just learning how to speak on the subject without seeming conceited, without seeming. I just think there's an etiquette to dealing with things you were never taught to deal with in a fame ways. Meaning, oddly, when you start taking interviews, people can ask you about your love life. Or like, hey, wait a minute, I met you 5 minutes ago, and you're asking me about dating this person, or or make those comments, as you say, to your face. Whereas like people don't say that to you in your real life. So dealing with that just comes with acquiring a vocabulary that you can kind of laugh and smile and say thank you in a non-awkward way. And in a way that, I just think it's a weird thing to do. It's an awkward position to put someone in. And just because their career has put them in front of a camera, they have to learn how to deal with this weird social thing where people might be talking about your looks or talking about your dating life.
But when I went on, like when I Googled you, for example, there was all these amazing videos, there was all this amazing information that you provided. And then there was this like whole screed of bullshit about, oh, let's look at his workout program. Oh, he's dating. And I was like, you do this amazing job. You educate so many people. And that's what some people are interested in.
That's what comes with the entertainment side of things. Like, I'm certainly not one of those people that sympathize with the really famous person who says, oh, you shouldn't be asking me these questions, or why are you chasing me around? Like, there's something about being in entertainment. Like, I often talk about the price of passion. Sometimes the price of my passion has been injuries, attacks, time away from home. But some of the price that I have to pay is the fact that what was paying for these crazy, amazing trips, the ones that you said, oh my God, Dave, I'd love to, do that. You wouldn't like to do some of the entertainment crappy things that I have to do to pay for it. Like I say, it's not nice having someone say, go buy a suit and go and make sure it's a freaking nice suit because you're going to be photographed. Like normal people don't have to deal with it. So you just have to understand a lot of the entertainment interest, whether it's dating or looks or workout or I could give you 50 different things that is weird that only really happens to people that are in entertainment. It's not lost on me that I'm getting these crazy, awesome animal things paid for by being in entertainment. So if I have to do the dance, I'll do the dance. And I'll hopefully learn how to navigate it in a way that I stay true to the person that I am. As you say, like, oh, Dave, you like you were, when you're in your 20s on camera. Well, the one advice I was given by someone in entertainment who'd been there for a long time is just make sure you be yourself. If you're never playing a character, that character doesn't get old. Meaning, when I was 20-year-old Dave, I was playing 20-year-old Dave on camera. So then 30-year-old Dave came along and people weren't tired of 30-year-old Dave because he had different interests and different ideas and different thoughts. And now that you've got 6-year-old Dave, I've always been myself. So there was never a point where I've overplayed some character that I was trying to be. I didn't ever try to be Crocodile Dundee or whatever. Like, the one thing that really drove me crazy when I started doing talk shows is back when I started doing them, everybody wore jungle suits. Right, like the short shorts, the khaki vests, and that, because like
the Jack Hanna look, was it?
Like Jack Hanna, and I don't want to run Jack down. He is, however, he did his thing. But like, to me, the idea of wearing a Bush uniform when you're in the middle of downtown New York or downtown LA, in my case, I got a pretty regular gig on the Tonight Show before my regular gig on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Like, the idea that I was holding a lion but had to wear a suit so you knew who I was. Like, no, I think even if I wear my T-shirt and jeans, if I'm the guy holding the lion, you'll get it. I'm an animal guy. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I feel like you got to stay true to the human being that you are. Whereas, like, I wear my bush gear in the bush, and I can wear my jeans and T-shirts at home. Just as similarly, I didn't wear a 3-piece suit when I went out and did the Tonight Show or Jimmy Kimmel Live, because that would also be weird. That's not exactly who I am. So. All of that just comes with navigating who you are, keeping true to that, and trying to understand what your goals are. And my goal was to get back out there in the bush. And then, that changed as I got older into, wanting to educate people and interest people. Like, if someone comes to me and says, oh man, I really love this animal, or I really got into this conservation because of this one thing that you did, that's like the ultimate compliment for me. I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. That's what I was hoping. Like, that's why I did it. That's why I flew away from my family, stayed in that stupid hotel, ate that crappy food so that I could go on that talk show, and you watched it and you loved that animal because of that. And I think that's great. I'll do it every day.
That is the thing that bugs me, is like people sitting there going, oh, he's loving the fame of it, he's loving the celebrity of it, and I'm thinking, what, going away and spending months away from his family, going away and staying in a hotel trying to find animals to, there's plenty of other ways you could become famous. Look at the Kardashians,
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, you can do that. No, there is a cost to all that stuff, and on the other side of things, like, if you get a free drink because someone liked your show, it's awesome. If someone comes over, the biggest compliment usually, it's something that most, like, you wouldn't typically get without fame. It'd be like, with someone coming up and saying, hey, you know what you do? I love it. I think that's awesome. Because you can't do what I do without being passionate. So if someone else comes up and says, hey, I'm also passionate about what you do, I also love lions, and I love that one lion thing that you did, that's that of anything that fame brings me, those moments are the ones that I'm like, wow, man, that's awesome. Because you've kind of met this kindred spirit in a restaurant or at a airport somewhere, and you get complimented for something that you really, really care about, which I like.
So what advice would you give to somebody who's wanting to go into like conservation or working with animals? And has your sort of outlook on it changed now that since you become a father, or does it make you want more inspired to show the next generation and give them the love of animals that you have?
I think it changes as time changes. I think conservation, if you're aware of the world, I think conservation changes. My biggest concern for conservation is the fact that a lot of the conservationists are academics, and that world changes too slowly, in my opinion, and they're less functional, meaning when you're in academia, you don't have a boss over your head saying either you get to here by, in the next 6 months or you're fired. So it's not a results driven business. It's more like get your grant, study your thing, answer your question, and carry on, keep doing that. So living out in the world of being functional and needing to get results, that's where conservation needs. And the needle's always changing because, for example, the world is now re-questioning whether climate change is real. Like, no conservationist 5 years ago would have thought that would be a reasonable question to ask. So you have to pivot. You're like, oh my God, there's this humongous group of people that think that I've got to go back to the 90s and explain what climate change is to people so that we can get them invested in this and in that. So my point to all that is that you're always having to assess and what conservation needs and to be good at conservation. And in my case, particularly because I feel like my skills really are in the kind of a spokesperson, information, encouragement. I'm like the recruitment office for wildlife conservation. That has to change. And so becoming a parent didn't change that, because even before I was a parent, I had switched into that headspace of like, really my goals for the next 10 years is going to be motivating people to love animals the way I do. I love wildlife conservation, and I think that it's become a passion even more when I can get people and feel like I've made an impact in some way. So my ideas of conservation changes with the needs that I see, but the fatherhood really wasn't a big impact for it. Except for the change in that, like, oh well, I want to be put in a position that'd be nice that my kid one day, like, oh yeah, my dad did that. Oh, would it some in some conservation sense.
And how do you think things are going to change now going forward with like the COVID situation? How can people help these animals in these situations? Is there something like, is there a way that you would recommend people listening who are interested in the monkeys and the lions and the tigers who follow you that could actually say, okay, this is a great way to help them. This is how we can help in this situation?
Well, one of the biggest things, in my opinion, it goes back to what we talked about in the land use situation. One of the biggest land use that's working for animals right now is ecotourism, right? So COVID smashed ecotourism, and people don't know if it's coming back. So it's the low hanging fruit. It's the easiest thing. Like, you want to go see, if you love lions, go see them. Go pay your fare to that country that has them, to that lodge that shows, and try to keep that ecotourism model going, because they're suffering and they need help. So that's a start, because those models are the only models right now, not just ecotourism, but the models where you're partnering with the locals. Those models are the only ones that are working for conservation right now, and they're starting to suffer, and we need to help them. And in a grander scale, like if you're talking more like COVID's really impacted the sanctuaries, the rescues, because they're mostly, those places are tiny little places, poorly funded, that are running on passion and love. So their income streams have been gone with COVID. So, if you have a favorite place that, had your favorite animal, think about, supporting them in some way, whether it's, buying your membership for the summer, or whatever it is, whatever they need for their support, go to that place and see what they need. Because there is a shortage, I think, of people taking care of animals. And I think the more that the good people are getting wiped off the earth, the more that the prevalent evil people that don't really care about the animals and think of them as an asset to abuse are gonna succeed in that way. So I think, planning your ecotourism dollars, go to Yellowstone, go to safari, go to the local park, go to the local zoo if you think it's a good one. Those things help to start, and then after that, chase your passion. I've always said information is everything. So you might be one of those people that are really interested in this one specific bird. Well, go do your research. You're growing up in a world that isn't like me. I used to have to look through encyclopedias and trying to figure out what any particular species wanted or needed, or where some group might be that needed my help. Didn't exist. Whereas now it's a Google away. I know it's hard. It's hard to find that right group and that right way to help. But the more you research, the more questions you ask, the more emails you send, the more time you spend on a species that you love, you'll find a way to make an impact.
Because this was actually what I was afraid of. We're now an hour in, and I think we've only just started a quarter of the questions I have. I was such a big fan that there's so many areas I wanted to cover. But I mean, you've helped me learn about animals. You've grown my sort of passion for animals. My nephew, who's 10, loves animals, and I show him like YouTube videos of yours, and he'll be like, "Oh my god, that's amazing! Can I see another one? Can you do it?" So you've built in this passion for him, and I can't say thanks enough for inspiring a kid from the Highlands in Scotland that they could work with animals, that they could go and do these things, or even just understand the planet better.
That's great.
I would love to have you on again and really go into overcoming fear, the work you've done on Dangerous Islands, the time you've done within the Pride. There's so many areas. But I know that you're probably a really busy guy at the minute. So what do you want people to take from this interview? If there was a sort of message, maybe a myth, if a reminder for people to take, what would you want it to be?
Generally speaking, whenever I do things like this, I do it because I want to inform people. I want people to, especially the people who are passionate about animals, I want them to be like, if I've given them any bit of information, like, oh, I wanted that question answered, great. If people get a little more excited, maybe someone who's listened to this does a YouTube search and sees some of those videos you talked about with your nephew, and they get a little bit more passionate about some species, great. My goal in life is just to impress upon people how animals are awesome, and then also that sharing of information is going to help. So if any of the information people got from this stuff and they felt like they're a little step closer to loving animals a little bit more, or getting other people involved, like let it spread like wildfire.
Well, I still have pages of questions, so we could go for hours more. Yeah,
we'll get to them. We'll get to them on volume 2.
Because that's what I love about this. It's like when you actually find somebody who genuinely cares, you just sit there and go, "I could speak to him all day." And I think that's definitely the thing. You're not a celebrity chasing, fame hungry guy. You're an animal lover who's doing amazing work, helping people, educating them, and showcasing these beautiful animals. And you're inspiring people to help animals and give them the support, help. You're doing amazing work. And there's just this small trolls who are just never going to change.
It's a part of success. You take it as a compliment.
You're always going to have people who are going to moan about the fact that you're on and say, "Oh, he does this," and I think, "Have you listened to the interview?" No. Well, then you can't say anything until you've listened to it.
Yeah.
It's like the misinformation with the COVID situation. Until people will actually sit and listen rather than follow social media or what their parents say. Yeah. How can people follow you? How can we keep in touch, see what you're doing?
A great question. I haven't been doing my social media very much. I'm going to get back on it this year. So I'd say the one that I'm most active with, or would be most active with, is Instagram. So my Instagram is Real Dave Salmoni, which is stupid because why would someone else be Dave Salmoni? But there is somebody that's taken my name and pretends to be me. Real Dave Salmoni is me. And I'll make the promise that I'll get back on it in the next couple of weeks.
Well, that's it for another week. And thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.